lovely week. We've had some amazing rains here in Southern California, and I've heard there's maybe a bit of snow happening around the rest of the country. It's very exciting for me, at least. I love it when there's a bit of weather, at least some different weather than sunshine and heat. Ugh, that's not my favorite thing. Well, anyways, we're doing something a little bit different this week. That's because this week kicks off convention season here in the tabletop gaming community, and I am, in fact, off in Genghis Con. So we're not doing our usual Tales of Adventures stream. Instead, we're going on a side quest. So in honor of convention season and Genghis Con and the usual fun things you get to do on conventions, we're going on a side quest that's all about dice. So we're going to explore the history of dice, a little bit about dice making, and where I'll tell you a little bit about my dice, how I like to keep my dice safe, and hopefully you'll share a little bit about how you like to keep your dice safe and what you do with your dice in the comments below. Now, of course, this week we are on YouTube, so you'll have to share in a different sort of comment section this week. But don't forget to join us over on Instagram, or join us next week over in Twitch, where we're back on our usual streaming schedule, Fridays, 7 p.m. Central, where we'll be coming back to do a little bit of adventure storytelling and exploring our own little hard of hearing character as we get into, well, International Hearing Week. And so we get to explore someone who's a little bit different than we might be used to when we encounter an NPC. So should be fun when we come back from Genghis Con. And if you happen to be off in Genghis Con this weekend, I do hope that you'll maybe seek me out and come say hey, because I would love to see some of you guys. I'll be hanging out with my glasses and curly hair, and perhaps maybe you'll see some flannel shirts and painting along the way. I'm usually wearing the same thing every day, even when I'm at a convention. So hopefully I will see you there. And with that, the tale to be told through history begins thus. All right, my friends. So the history of dice actually begins quite some time ago. Did you know that some of the earliest dice were discovered about 2000 BCE, that's before the Common Era, in ancient Egypt? Some excavations of the earliest tombs discovered what we call cubic dice. Now, for us role-playing nerds or geeks, that might be a D6, right? Standard little die that we use in all kinds of gaming systems, including Dungeons and Dragons, and something a little more common like Monopoly or Candyland. It's a very common type of dice, and people use it all the time for all kinds of things, and they've been using it for centuries. It is not, however, the first dice to ever pop up. It's just one of the more common ones. And it happens to have also been used in a very famous epic poem. Has anyone ever heard of the Sanskrit epic Mahabharata? Well, it happens to be the world's longest epic piece of poetry, and a D6 set of dice happens to show up in that piece of epic. So if you want to know a little bit more about famous dice, you might want to look up that piece of epic poetry. It's actually quite interesting. Among other pieces of dice, what we might call a D2, or a two-sided piece of dice, was used quite often in different types of Egyptian games, and it was probably one of the earliest types of dice ever used. It's arguable that it was the first type of dice and was used in really common types of games. Other types of dice were found in Chinese excavations around 600 BCE. Now, it's not noted what type of dice they were, just that they were, in fact, dice. But given what we know about the D6, it's probably a good guess that it was one of those kinds of dice, or something that could have been used in gambling. The more that I'm looking into the history of dice, the more I'm realizing that, well, dice is pretty much used for two different kinds of purposes. Board games, like what we use it for, and, well, gambling. Which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because not much has changed. What do we use our dice for? Board games and, well, gambling. It's kind of cool when you think about it. All right. As we move through the Common Era, we know that dice have continued to be used throughout the ages, including by the Romans. We know that they used dice for all kinds of things, including note-taking and, well, gambling. No shocker there. But they were also used in the Americas, most notably by the Aztecs in various sacred rituals. Again, we don't know much about what kinds of dice the Aztec used, and in this case, I'm guessing it was probably not the D6, but you never know for sure. One thing I can tell you about sacred rituals is that dice were used in other cultures for sacred rituals or divining. In fact, the Celts often used dice for rituals. They used a kind that was more like sticks. It was similar to a long, thin rod. Sometimes it was two-sided, sometimes it was four-sided, and it was marked with runes. If you were from a more Nordic culture, like the Vikings, they used Eldar Futhark runes. And sometimes the system is still used today. For example, if you purchase Futhark stones, it's likely that they're two-sided. One side will have a certain type of rune on it, and the other will have its opposite. And then you cast the stones. It's sort of like using dice, a two-sided die with a runic system on it. In the olden days, this would be more like a traditional dice in a stick form. The Celts used this as well, only they would have been using Occam runes instead of Eldar Futhark. You guys are getting a lot of history today. I know it's kind of interesting, but we are slowly moving our way through the Common Era. And that brings us to polyhedral dice, and that's probably something a little more familiar to all of us, because that's what we use in tabletop role-playing games, just like Dungeons and Dragons. Now, their shapes are kind of odd and interesting, and originally you didn't play with a full set of 7 dice. You see, in the beginning, we only had a much smaller set. Back in 1904, when we first started playing tabletop war games, now I know we're way predating Dungeons and Dragons, but the first war-playing game used a single 10-sided die. Now, it wasn't marked as a D10, obviously, but it was used as a single dice for the war game patented by Aldrich Friedenthal, and that was sort of the precursor to Dungeons and Dragons. One might say it eventually became the war game Risk. That's what it's most similar to, and it did use sort of like a D10. Don't quote me on this here, okay? The official D10 doesn't come out until much later. This is just sort of like the grandfather die, if there is such a thing. Later, H.G. Wells will sort of promote the game a little bit farther with his edition, but we are still not there with official polyhedral die. We're sort of in the grandfather phase of dice. Next, we get a dice that's a little interesting. It's numbered 0 through 9. Now, sometimes dice makers will still use this system, and it's meant to be used as a D10. But at the time, it worked a little differently. It was sort of like a D9-ish, okay? Because the 0 was literally used as the 0. It didn't represent a 10 like it does today. In fact, I have a dice here that I will show you later once I pull it out that does use the 0, and it's a D10. And that's one of the ways that dice makers use them today. It's a design choice for marking their numbers. It's really kind of interesting and kind of honors the original icosahedron dice. I hope I said that correctly. Some of these names are quite difficult. Okay, and that was used from about 1950 to the 1960s-ish. And it was used by the Japanese Gaming Association. And I don't know if it's still in use today, probably just the design standards. It actually kind of looks a little bit like a D20 because it was numbered 0 through 9 twice. So, factoid for you there. Later on, we're going to start introducing a game that's a little bit similar to Dungeons and Dragons, but it's still closer to Risk or the early war games. And it uses a set of 5 dice. And now we're getting to the point where we're starting to get to Dungeons and Dragons, because now we're getting to 1968 and 1969. And that's when Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson first meet each other at Gen Con, and they start to get together on Dungeons and Dragons. And they do use the original 5 die system, okay? And eventually, we're gonna get to the point where we realize we need some more die. So the original dice included what we might call a D4, a D6, a D20. I don't get this wrong. I am starting to lose my voice here a little bit, you guys. You might have noticed that last week as well. What looks like a D8. And I'm not even going to guess on that last one because I'm looking at a picture here and trying to count the numbers. So I'm not going to guess there on that one. Now, eventually they realized that this is not going to be enough dice to be going around with, right? And that's when they start adding things on. It's not until the 1980s that we start to get into the official D10. Now, obviously, we've had that other dice floating around for a while, but they use the 0 officially as a 0. And that's when Game Science comes out with the D10, and they call it the pentagonal trapezohedron. And that looks exactly like a D10. Sometimes it is numbered with a 0 instead of a 10, but it is officially a D10 this time. And then in the 1990s, Game Science comes out with the percent die. And so now we officially have the full 7 set that we use all the time. Occasionally, of course, we do have that crystalline die that comes out every now and again, but it doesn't get used very often, and that did come out in 1998, so that one's kind of fun to have around. So of course, again, the original Dungeons and Dragons only used 5 die, and I do see here that it was a D4, D6, D8, D12, and a D20. So I was right on those first 3. I got the D12 wrong. It was a D12. I was blanking on what that one was, a D12. Doesn't come up very often for me and my characters. So that's because I keep playing Rangers. All right. And then later, of course, we added the D10 and the D%. So yes, interesting things going on here in the history of dice, using them for games, using them for gambling, consistent throughout history, and then also using them for divination and rituals is something that pops up occasionally. And for our role-playing things, it's kind of fun to know that throughout history, their purposes and how many that we've used has kind of changed a little bit over the last 100 years or so. But something that's kind of fun to learn is that what we can make dice out of hasn't changed too much over the years. But we're coming up with new techniques all the time. Personally, I do not make my own dice. I like to dabble with painting the numbers occasionally. But that's pretty much it. The most common material has always been and continues to be resin. Sometimes people prefer a rounded edge to their dice. Some people prefer a nice, hard, crisp edge. Find that that's easier to roll with. Gemstone dice are always popular these days as we learn to work with new materials. Those are two kind of the most popular things. If you guys have something else that you found that your dice is made from, do throw that down in the comments, because that's always kind of a fun thing to discover over time. Inking your dice is almost always acrylics. I found watercolor is fun, but you do have to seal it first and afterwards to make sure your ink doesn't run if you ever accidentally drop them in something wet, which is something that can always happen at your gaming table as you're snacking. Another thing that you can ink them with, of course, is gel pens and nail polish, if you happen to have nail polish hanging around, because it's very similar to acrylics, but messy to work with, just so you know. All right, so now that we've gone over a little bit of the history of dice and dice making, I'm going to throw up a little bit of an intermission while I get my camera set up, and then I'm going to show you guys some of my dice, and I hope as we chat along you guys will throw some comments in the comment section about your own dice and your knowledge of dice making. Now, I did work really hard on the research of the history of dice, but of course there's only so much I can do to be 100% historically accurate. So if you happen to have caught anything that I might have missed and want to add on, or if you caught anything that has since been proven to be historically inaccurate, do throw that in there. I did pull things from what I consider to be historically accurate and reliable academic resources, but no one's 100% perfect all the time. So help me out and help you out by if you notice anything that is not as accurate as it once was, because after all, even these resources can prove to be outdated very quickly. Let me know, and we can help each other update each other's information as we continue to learn together. All right, see you back after the break. All right, everyone, welcome back. I hope you all are having a great time out there tonight. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a little bit of a different setup than we normally have. I'm hoping that will help us all see the dice a little bit better. As I'm doing this, I am going to have information on where I got my dice, who sold them, in the info section of this YouTube video. That way, if anybody is interested in the artist's work for themselves, they are more than welcome to go check that out and possibly get a set of their own if it's still available, because I know some artists produce multiple sets and it may still be out there. I don't know. Or at least maybe get another set from the artist, because they are some amazing artists out there. So yes, go check them out, definitely. So don't let me forget to put that in there. All right, so you did see me inking one set of dice earlier today. I'm going to save that for later because it's still drying just a wee bit. Here's one set though that I have been working on. This is a dedicated set of dice that I've been working on for my Selkie Druid, Neris Delin. I got this set from, I'm going to bring it up here so you guys can see in the light. Hopefully focus. There it goes. You can see this is from Redden Arts. They're actually located in... Oh, brain just went blank. Where are they located in? I want to say Kiev. I'm probably wrong. But I got this set because of the way they included that blue feather. It looks a lot like waves. And that little bit of rose petal just has this sort of coral aspect to it that is just so playful and exactly like a selkie swimming through the water. And I just kind of love this sort of blue to it. So I'm still working on the ink. Right now I've got the golds on there on the highs and lows. And then I'm gonna slowly add in, I've got that one layer of Prussian blue. And I'm gonna go back in with a little bit of white gouache and try to give it a bit of like a white wave aspect. Yes, those numbers are very dark, aren't they? So I'm just gonna try to see if I can lighten that up just a little bit, give it some kind of a wave and sparkle. And once I finished, it won't be till after Genghis Con, obviously. But once I finished, I will show those to you guys so you can see what it looks like all polished up and nice. Okay, so those are hers. This set just came in today, actually. If I remember correctly, they're from Regal Rollers. I am gonna have to look up if this particular set. Here, let's do the chonker. This is the D20. I'm gonna have to look up if this particular seller has a website or not, because I actually got this one through a Kickstarter. So I am not entirely clear. Please focus. There we go. If they normally have like their own shop, or if this is like a one-off thing for them. But this is their Sugar Rush dice. Not really sure if I have a character that's going to end up with these dice, or this will be just sort of like the extra borrow set that's going to hang out for a while. But those little bits of gold came out really nicely, I think. So yes, it's sort of like a surprise. Oh, it came early set that just showed up today. I really didn't think those were going to come. But yes, so that's that one. This is the set I'm particularly excited about. Not that I love one set more than another, but I do think we all kind of have our favorites. This one's by the Gnome Chomsky, and I found them on Etsy, but they do have an Instagram that I follow. So if you follow me, you'll be able to find them very easily. I asked for this set to arrive uninked, and I did ink it myself. They work with resin and ink inclusions. So those are actually not inclusions in there. That's all ink work. And I can only imagine how long it took them to do that. It's kind of amazing. When I inked it, I did the highs and lows with a base of gold, and then added a little bit of yellow on top of there to give it some extra bit of dimension, and then everything else is a base of green, and it didn't quite come out the way I was hoping for. I probably just did it too dark. But then the other numbers, focus, there we go, are, yeah, let's turn that around. I have like a green and black ombre on it, and these are Glen Withers, my retired ranger now, dedicated dice. So I picked those for him because they just have that kind of like green foresty vibe to them, but I also I didn't want it to be too dark and gloomy or moody, even though he is kind of a moody character, because towards the end there he did end up falling in love with a very kind of floral and happy druid kind of character who was kind of weaving flowers into his hair. So I kind of wanted there just to be that little bit of sparkled, happier kind of element to them. So that I think these dice kind of capture that quite a bit. Okay. So moving on, I'm gonna pull these out of their jar. Some dice are packed up before Genghis Con, so bear with me, and I'll show you their storage in a second here. Okay, so these are the dice you guys saw me painting earlier, and they're still a little tacky from the wax, so you may notice some of that as I'm showing it to you, so forgive me. These ones are by Fennec and Finch. They do have a website both on Etsy and their own website, which I think is pretty cool. They originally came in a really pretty gold, which you can still see on there, and I did decide to re-ink them only because I was having a little trouble. There it goes. Having a little trouble seeing the numbers when I rolled them. Sometimes my eyeballs just don't like to read the numbers. They get a little blurry on me. Come on, focus. Focus on this beautiful dice. It's so amazing as I drop it all over the floor. Strange things happen live. There we go. Sort of blurry still, but there we go. Yes. So I wanted to, I just wanted to honor like the original intent though. So I just added a little bit of ombre with some white and bronze. So that gold in the middle is all theirs. That's their original work. And then I just threw in a little bit of white in there to help kind of balance out that number and make it a little easier to see when I'm rolling. Make it pop just a tiny little bit. But that rest is all theirs. So those flowers, those are all theirs. And I haven't officially decided this because I would like to see how this character plays out. But we are in a wild Beyond the Witchlight. I always want to say behind. I know that's not correct. Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign. And I am thinking that this might be a good dedicated dice for my fighter Willow, who's just a little bit moody, but loves playing with flowers in her hair. She's that Fae Lost backgrounds. So she's got flowers growing out, and she's always picking more and decorating herself with them. So I think that would kind of be a good set of dice for her, but I kind of want to see how she plays out because we've just started playing. We're only at level 2 or something like that. If so much can happen in a campaign and you've only been going for a couple months. So I just kind of want to see how things go, and that could be a fun set of dice for them. But either way, I do like how large these numbers are. Even on the D20, I mean, look how big. It just makes it so easy to see things. Makes my brain happy. Anyways, so that's Fennec and Finch. Alright, so these are my last ones I'm going to show you guys today. This is the first set of dice that I got, and I got these to be the GM dice. So I did run only one campaign myself. I'm going to show you these. And these are by Brain Just Broke, Everything Dice. They are on Etsy, but they do have their own website as well. And these are Sublime Blight dice, and these are the dice that I originally saw, I want to see on Pinterest, like well over a year ago when I was first getting into tabletop games, and I just sort of was like, whoa, dice are so pretty, must own dice someday. And then for Christmas I was lucky enough to get my first set of dice, and it was these, lo and behold. And so these are my dedicated GM dice for, I just forgot my old campaign. That's sad. For Lost Mines of Phandelver. So these are the Remember Phandelver dice, because we spent a lot of time in the Neverwinter Woods, and it was blighted. They were blighted woods. So these are the dedicated Blighted Woods dice. It's my own private joke. But yes, and actually these are what they call the B grade dice. They're not even the official dice. I can't remember what she said was incorrect about them. It was something about the inclusions, but you can't even tell. These look like 100% glorious, amazing dice. Like you would, unless someone told me, I can't even find. They just look amazing. Anyways, I just love the colors on these ones. Well, the way everything dice does blends of color with ink, that kind of ink blends, it's just always so amazing to me. I just love that. Come on, focus. You're not going to show it now, are you? Oh, camera. Oh well. Okay. So yes, those are the dice as they currently exist. So the couple of dice that I kind of carry around that aren't character dedicated really for right now, I like to keep in these vials. Unfortunately, I've been having trouble finding vials that are like perfectly sized for the dice. They're either too small or a little too big. So these are like take two of the version of vials, but I like these because they're just the right length to fit a single set of dice, and then they fit like perfectly in a side pocket of a backpack or a purse or something like that, and then you can just carry it around. Cork comes right off and you can just stick them in there. Because they were a little big, I did stick a little bit of moss and glued it down in the bottom, because I was a little worried that it was going to rattle around and scratch up the dice. I know that's something that can happen, especially with certain kinds of sharp edge dice, and I was a little worried about that. So I just stuck a little bit of moss down there and a little bit of hemp at the top to keep it all nice in there. And then you just put your dice down in there. I know it's nothing exciting. Dice go in. I like putting them in a certain order because I'm a nerd like that. And then they're all set to travel with you. Yay, dice. So yes, those are my vials. These ones, because they're a dedicated character dice, they do have a box. So this box, as you can see, has a bit of felt at the bottom. I'm making sure it catches the light so you guys can see. And then it has the foam inserts so that the dice sit nice and snugly in there. Because these dice are a little bit smaller than the standard. I don't know if they're the standard 20 millimeter. They might be 16. I've never measured. I really don't care. And then they do wiggle just a little bit. So the lid has felt too, just to make sure. Plus, if you're traveling, this kind of makes a fun little mini dice roller. Although some GMs won't want them to be this small, so just ask. But this is always kind of fun to make sure that you have like a nice sturdy little, and it's not big, so it can fit really snugly into like your carry-on and things. And because this is Glenn's dedicated dice box, I did make sure to give him a fun little, I want to make sure I have this right, I say a fun little picture. So this painting is from his area of the woods where he was originally from, and so I have that as part of his lid for his dice box, and I think it kind of goes nicely with his dice here. Ta-da! Dice and lid. They go really nicely together. I'm still working on the boxes for the other dedicated dice, so we'll see how that goes over time, but for right now they're kind of fun together. So yeah, and then of course they all just kind of like fit nice and little bloop. I was like putting the D20 in the middle because I'm that person. They all have to have their own little spot. But yeah, someday hopefully I will get really good at making different shapes of inserts so that they're not all the same hexagonal shape, but for right now they're all the same insert shape. It is what it is, but they do fit in there nice and snugly. Like they're not going to come out. They just wiggle a little bit more than I'd like, and then boop, they're in their box and they're good to go wherever you'd like. So yes, I always think those are kind of fun. If you guys have different kinds of dice boxes, let me know, because I know some people prefer a different shape or a different kind, so throw that into the comments. And if you guys have a favorite dice seller, not that I need more dice, but I do like exploring different things. Those are always kind of fun. And of course, sometimes you need a dice cheat sheet, so it never hurts to carry one of these things around with you. It fits really nicely in one of these. I've never gotten it to fit in one of the vials though. I wish. Then it would be too small. But those are always kind of fun, and it happens to match Lynn's box. Ha ha ha. I didn't even realize that. But yes, so this has been our own little mini side quest on dice. It has been kind of fun hanging with you guys there, even if we're not together for this week here at Genghis Con. But if any of you all happen to be around, do come say hi, because that'd be really kind of cool to meet some of you all in person. Talk about dice if you'd like. If not, I will get to see you guys all next week back on our normal stream, and hopefully we'll all get to have a little bit of fun together talking about a new kind of NPC as we explore through the woods and have a little bit of fun. Not to give too much away. Otherwise, be safe out there in the storms this weekend. Some of them will get a little bit crazy, especially here on the West Coast. And I hope you East Coast friends are being safe out there as well, and things aren't getting too crazy for you either. So until next week, have a lovely weekend, and don't forget to feed your inner storytelling mimics. Bye everyone.